You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. So great to be able to join you here today on this Training Thursday show, where I want to show you the pros and the cons, yes, the cons of prolonged fasting, exercise, and autophagy. So right now in the news, in the media, autophagy, which is basically the cleaning up of all of your cells and your internal body. I'll go over that more in depth. Prolonged fasting, meaning prolonged intermittent fasting, keto even, as well as exercise are kind of all being lumped together. Now, remember, there are always pros to a lot of these things, and we see them, especially anecdotally, in our own life if we're following any of these types of protocols. The problem is, over time, they may just be detrimental to your health. So I never want to play devil's advocate for the sake of being devil's advocate. But what I want to show you is the truth behind all of these processes, so that when you see it, a quick snippet online or a tweet here or a book there, that you realize that there are always pros and cons to every diet plan, exercise program, nutritional supplement, etc. What we want to do is understand that usually in the middle, not high and not low, is the best place to be. Again, not always, but usually, meaning like when we look at nutritional supplements, super high dosages, probably not the best thing for the long term, probably okay in the short term. Going super low carb, okay in the short term, but probably not the best thing in the long term. Fasting, excellent. One of the most powerful things you can do. The closest thing we have to the fountain of youth. But 16 hours, 18 hours, 22 hours a day of fasting every day, probably not the best in the long run. So let's start to break this down today. Let's look at it. Let's look at all of these things because they're a part of our culture. They're going to continue to be on the rise and on the climb for the next year or two before, of course, they start to come down because a lot of times they are fads, right? I mean, when we look at these things, they are short-term hacks for the body, and that's all they are. I don't want you to hack your way through life. I really don't. Because hacks can provide you with immediate results. The problem is they can provide you also with long-term hardships. And I don't want you to have the immediate results, but then also long-term hardships. You shouldn't have to have both. Maybe you just take a couple extra weeks to get your results, but then also enjoy the long-term anti-aging and wellness-based benefits as well. So what am I alluding to today? Well, let's take three different parts to this. We have longer intermittent fasting. So a lot of people are doing longer intermittent fasting. 16 hours, so basically fasting till lunch, sometimes 18 hours till lunch, or they're fasting and just eating one meal per day. Okay? So they're essentially going, let's say, 23 hours a day, and they're having one meal, and they're kind of loading up at that one meal. Now, what's the goal of this? Well, the goal of this is to allow your body to tap into more body fat and also clean up your system. So the body fat is different. If we stabilize blood sugar, we don't get any highs and lows. We try to keep hormones balanced. That includes cortisol, though, and that's not easy when you're fasting all the time if you live a somewhat stressed life or you're exercising. And I've done shows on that as well. So if you want to check out how even in fasting you can have high blood sugar through stress and cortisol production, you can check out that previous podcast on that. We'll try to embed it today at stephencabral.com/1385. So, okay, that's the longer fasting. Now, I'll give you my recommendations at the end of the show, which are, again, more moderate. Because why? Because they give you the benefits in the short term and the long term. And that's what I want for people. So now let's look at autophagy. Well, autophagy we've spoken about before. I would love you to tune into some of my previous shows on autophagy. We've been talking about this now for about 4 years in the Cabral concept, but it's becoming more popular. So let's talk about it a little bit more. But that's the whole reason we do the functional medicine detox, right? We do our seasonal-based detoxes. So on episode 1369, 2 weeks ago, I went over 9 ways to increase autophagy. And exercise was one of those. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So here's the thing. Autophagy allows you don't have to do anything. You simply don't have more toxins or food or things like that coming in for a period of so the major period of 16, 18 hours or so. But here's the thing. Your body is going through autophagy when it does not have a lot of highs and lows in blood sugar. And it's going through autophagy all through the night as well. So you just speed it up by doing something, again, like a functional medicine detox, etc. Exercise in a moderate fashion, and we'll be talking about exactly what that is today, actually helps to improve autophagy. It helps to clean up muscle cells. We'll be talking about what those are, the proteins and organelles and all the muscle tissue damage as well. And it helps, believe it or not, if the exercise is moderate, rebuilding and adding even more mitochondria through moderate weight training. So why don't I go over what moderate weight training is? So moderate weight training is going to be not max effort, not to failure, and most likely, if we're talking about weight training, about 3 days per week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe 4, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So you have a day off essentially in between workouts, which allows for the cleanup of broken down muscle tissue inside the body and enables your body to actually use autophagy to its greatest advantage without there always being tissue breakdown. So that's weight training. The weight training would be somewhere between 20 minutes and 40 minutes or so of exercise. Again, not max effort, and that could be combined cardiovascular work with resistance training. Resistance training could be bands, your own body weight, kettlebells, barbells, dumbbells, sandbags, you name it. Whatever you'd like to use, you can use that. Again, within a normal exercise parameter, not massive muscle tissue damage where you're super sore for the next 2-3 days after your workout. Okay, now let's look at all 3 of these again. So if people are fasting 16 plus hours a day, okay, that's intermittent fast because they want to get into autophagy, and they are, and they exercise on top of that. Let me just show you what happens. And I want to actually quote the research for you. So again, this research has been around for a while. The Nobel Prize in medicine, one specific sect of medicine, was won in 2016, late 2016, that brought autophagy to mainstream in 2017. So an autophagy, again, is our own body cleaning up cancer cells inside of our body, getting rid of them, killing them, breaking them down. Why don't I actually quote it for you? Autophagy is a catabolic process that provides the degradation of altered or damaged organelles through the fusion between autophagosomes and lysosomes. Proper regulation of the autophagic flux is fundamental for the homeostasis of skeletal muscles in physiological conditions and in response to stress. Defective as well as excessive autophagy is detrimental for muscle health and has a pathogenic role in several forms of muscle diseases. I'm going to keep it at that. Now, that was medical jargon, right? So let's break down all the medical jargon. What does all that mean? Autophagy is a catabolic process. Let's go over that first. This will become more mainstream in the future, but it's not right now because here's the thing. When you don't eat for an extended period of time and you're exercising and you're doing low carb or keto, same thing. Again, I know keto is specific and I've gone all through that before, so I'm not gonna downgrade what keto is. Just that most people aren't on a keto diet. That's the truth. Most people are on a low carb diet, but they're taking in far too much protein to actually be in ketosis. But regardless, so you're on a lower carb diet, you're doing longer intermittent fasting, and you're exercising. We're stating clinical research that shows understood. Like, listen, we get it. It's going to cause weight loss. It's going to cause rapid water weight loss as well. But here's what's going to happen in the long run. You're going to lose the body fat, but you're also going to start to break down your own muscle tissue as well. It's stating it right here. The muscle biopsies were done. So what I want to just share with you is that there are a lot of great things. This is basically a warning. There are a lot of great things that are great in the short run. Are you listening to, are you working with, are you getting your information from an unbiased source? If the person is all in on keto, be careful. Be careful with that. Keto is a medical-based diet that was never meant to go mainstream or have people do it for an extended period of time. If you want to do keto for 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks, and then transition out of it, I'm okay with that. Our original nutrition plan from back in the late 90s, early 2000s was keto before keto was cool. But we didn't keep people in ketosis. That was never the goal. They were basically in it for a period of 3 weeks or so. That's all. And then they came out of it. They transitioned out of it. Never meant to be long-term. Okay. Now, what about intermittent fasting? Love intermittent fasting. Couldn't be a bigger fan. Probably no one's a bigger proponent. But it can be overdone. And that's because if you're over-exercising, we'll talk about what that is in a moment, and you've been fasting for 16 plus hours, 18 plus hours, you're definitely in an autophagy-based zone. All of that combined with not even refueling your muscles with carbohydrates, what's it going to lead to? Muscle tissue breakdown. Now, what does that look like? Remember, you're losing weight. Your body's transforming. You look leaner, right? Here's the problem. And I see this all the time when I work with athletes, when I work with figure competitors, when I work with celebrities, when I work with people on all of these programs. They come in and I can immediately tell. But here's why. Here's a dead giveaway, and I want all of our integrative health practitioners to use this. I want everyone who's a health coach or personal trainers to use this as well. If a patient or client comes into you and their elbow, it's called the breadth of the elbow, okay? If the elbow is thicker, so the width from side to side of the elbow is thicker than the upper arm, we're starting to get quite a bit of muscle loss. If the wrist is thicker than the forearm, the bone, we're actually talking about the skeletal, right? We're talking about the skeleton. Now, the skeleton is there for our muscles to move it. It adds structure, but the muscles should be there. And whenever I talk about muscles, there's always this myth that, we need women or men to be bulky and have a lot of muscle. That's not the case. But you need to have enough muscle in your body for multiple reasons. One is health, okay? Your muscles store 70+% of your water. I should say the muscles are 72% or so water. They store a lot of nutrients. They house the mitochondria. That's your energy system. Very important. Less muscle tissue, less mitochondria. Bottom line. Also, your muscles denote your metabolism. The more muscle you have, the more calories you can eat, in most cases. Muscle leads to more metabolism. It is, by definition, metabolic. You want muscle on your body. You don't need to add an excess, add however much you want. But as you start to, this is the case of becoming emaciated. This really is. And I see it all the time. I'm looking at people online doing videos and doing whatever, and I say, wow, and again, I don't judge anyone, and I would never name names, but I'm like, their face is becoming very gaunt. I can actually see that their skin is becoming a little thinner. I'll link up the article. It's the research. It's actually quite long, but it shows that there's a breakdown in collagen, that you're going to get more wrinkles. Your skin's going to thin. You're going to start to age faster. And yes, you're going to lose muscle tissue. So I was going to go in depth, more about this, but autophagy is a catabolic process. Catabolism is breakdown. You might say, well, now you make it sound like autophagy is bad. No, autophagy is not bad. Autophagy is very good. What does true naturopathy and bioregulatory preach? What do they preach? What does Ayurveda preach? Balance. It's never about what moderation is, because who knows what moderation is? Is a cookie a day moderation? Is a glass of alcohol a day moderation? I don't know, because you need to tell me who's asking. You want to say that the person with chronic fatigue, Addison's disease, myalgic encephalitis should be drinking a glass of alcohol a day? I will say absolutely not. Absolutely not. These people need to get into deep restorative sleep. Alcohol's not going to help them with that. It's going to weaken their immune system. It's going to lower the secretory IgA. It's going to drop them into hypoglycemia. No, we don't want that. Moderation for them is 0. Someone else, it could be fine. So again, who's asking? But here's the other thing. There is such thing as balance. There's no doubt about it. Now, an endomorphic body type, a kapha body type, that typically means someone with naturally larger calves, naturally more of a rounder face and head, naturally more of a robust body type. Nothing wrong with that. Actually really great. Here's what it does. Better immunity typically in the long run. Allows you to do more exercise. Typically allows you to do more fasting. Why? More anabolic naturally. Add more muscle naturally. They add more body fat. They add more of everything. They hold more of everything. They're more anabolic. Would that person do well with a little longer fast? With a little bit more exercise on a near daily basis? Yes. Yes, they would. Why? Because autophagy is catabolic. So what are they doing? They're balancing their natural anabolism with catabolism. Autophagy, longer fasting, exercise. I'm going to be teaching this, and I don't know that anyone's ever taught this, but I will be teaching this January. I will be taking people through a true weight loss, metabolic-based course. And this doesn't mean that other people don't have great information. They do. But what I want to do is put it all together for you so that you truly understand how do you balance your body. And you'll know. You will absolutely know. And that's one of the things that I'm just trying to share what I've been fortunate enough to find out, research, discover in my life. So there is a balance. Now, let's say you're more of that Pitta or Vata-based body type especially. And you're doing the longer fast because you've heard it's the thing to do. You're doing keto because you heard it's the thing to do. Or carnivore or low carb. I'm telling you right now, massively detrimental. You're already more of a catabolic body type. You naturally lose weight without trying for the most part. You're naturally lean. Why? You already know that you dip into autophagy more. You dip into lower blood sugar more often, most likely. Why are you following a plan that's more catabolic? You are going to break down muscle tissue, collagen. You're going to age faster. You're going to stress your nervous system to a higher degree. You're going to stress your kidneys to a higher degree as you're breaking down all the protein. What does that mean for you? It means this. It's harder to get that back as well. You're not naturally an anabolic type. Now, I still believe you should be doing your 12-hour overnight fast. But for you, probably not the 16 hours or more. Really important to appreciate our body type. Pros and cons to every body type, pros and cons to it all. Remember, there is no one that's better than the other. You know, a kapha body type is envious of the Vata because they can eat carbs and not gain weight. And the Vata is envious of the kapha because they might have bigger muscles or they might have more of hips or glutes or butt, whatever you want to call it, right? The grass is always greener. Let's appreciate what we have. Let's keep it in balance. Let's be grateful that we are able to maintain our overall health. Or if you don't have your health, that you're on your way to getting that back. Same with the body that you want. So let me just quote just a couple more things. The connection between muscle contraction and autophagy can be related to the two most important functions of autophagy: maintaining the cell free of dysfunctional organelles and providing new sources of energy. It is well established that physical activity and muscle contraction cause an increase in ROS, which stands for reactive oxygen species, production and oxidative stress. Indeed, oxidative stress has an important role in muscle signaling, but can also be a damaging factor for contractile proteins and organelles. Therefore, induction of autophagy during acute training or endurance training is required to remove dangerous unfolded proteins as well as dysfunctional organelles and muscle fibers. Autophagy is critical to produce alternative sources of energy in order to maintain basal homeostasis of muscle cells during energetic stress. One last line I'll give you. Since autophagy flux is deficient in COL6A1, this has to do with the specific muscle type. Let's get back to that, and I'll go over that in just a moment for those that want to know. I just call it COL6A1 muscles, and is not increased during physical exercise. This defect enhances myofiber instability and as a result of accumulation of damaged mitochondria. Further mechanisms may contribute to aggravated muscle pathology of COL6A1 after physical exercise. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that to a certain point, exercise benefits the entire body. It improves autophagy, and autophagy actually helps to rebuild muscles and clean out damaged organelles and proteins from inside of the muscle tissue. That's a good thing, right? This is a good thing. That is basically emptying the rainbow, right? So we go in, and autophagy helps with the phagosomes and with lysosomes, and it comes in and it just basically, like Pac-Man or Pac-Woman, it engulfs, it eats up all of the necrotic tissue, dead tissue, and it helps to clean all of that up. That's great. What happens, and it makes sense, right? If we do too much endurance work or we exercise for too long, the muscle damage is too great, especially as you age. And then the cleanup is actually affected. You create more oxidative stress in the body. When you hear oxidative or reactive oxygen species, I want you to think that the body is essentially rusting or oxidizing from the inside out. And this is where you start to see kind of the spots on the skin, brown spots or so. You start to see wrinkles, more fine lines, hair is thinning, skin is thinning, all of those things. You see more of the oxidative-based stress. So what we always have to go back to is this. And I know by the end of the podcast, hopefully it seems like, oh, well, that should be common sense. That's what I want it to be. I want it to be common sense, but as an industry, because the media will never share this with you, normal levels of fasting, normal levels of exercise. Go back to all my exercise program on every Training Thursday. Today is episode 1385. I've gone over the perfect week of exercise before. Remember, if you go to stephencabral.com/podcasts, I can never teach everything in one podcast, but there's 1,385 podcasts that you'll be able to go through, learn, develop your own knowledge base of unbiased functional medicine so you really understand what's right. Again, fasting is great for you. Every week I do a 24-hour from Sunday night to Monday night, or I do my one-day reset diet. And again, you can look that up. Every 12 weeks, I do a little over 2 days of a fast. Now, it's with shakes each day to kick in my liver-based detox, but I do that every 12 weeks. Okay, so that's important to look at it. So I do these things. But on a daily basis, I am not adding fuel to the fire and becoming massively catabolic on a daily basis, because I know that's going to age me at a faster degree. So I don't overdo my exercise. I don't overdo my fasting. And I want the same for you. You don't do keto every single day of your life. You don't do low carb every single day of your life. There is such a thing as not just becoming fat adapted, but actually carbohydrate adapted. Your body, as a novel approach, should actually be able to use carbohydrates, right? And these things, I feel like sometimes I'm the, bringer of bad news, or like I'm always playing devil's advocate. But you have to understand, anybody that's telling you this is the way, 16, 18, 20 hours a day, every day, well, good results in the short term. What about the long term? Always think about it from a long-term perspective as well. You can get the great results, you really can, but get the great results up front while then having a long-term plan to work on anti-aging, wellness, not just body transformation-based goals. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. I appreciate you. And as always, if this show is helpful, spread the word. Help me out. Let's get this message to everyone all over the world. Thank you so much. Take care. Have an amazing day. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing, and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests, or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equi.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.